Today on Earth Focus, menhaden may be the most important fish in the sea. They support the food chain, but their survival is threatened. An award-winning student film captures the story. Filmmakers share the challenge of telling the tale of a fish most people have never heard of. Coming up on Earth Focus.
This is a story about a fish most Americans have never even heard of. But for those who grew up with this fish, for those who rely on it for their livelihoods, it goes by many names.
Bunkles, some call them alewives, but their name is menhaden.
It has been hailed as the most important fish in the sea. This is a story about menhaden, the people who love them, and the people who may be loving them to death.
Menhaden's a stinky little fish that hardly anybody gives any credit to. You wouldn't want to eat it. It tastes terrible. It's oily, but it's the most intricate part of our whole entire bay system. Everybody should know about this little stinky critter called the menhaden.
Menhaden are a bait fish, and they're really important to the ecology of the Chesapeake Bay, as well as all of the states that are on the Atlantic seaboard and the states that ring the Gulf of Mexico. And the reason is because they are a forage fish and they are a filter fish, which means they filter water and make it cleaner.
Economically, it also is used by a lot of bait fishermen, as well as this entire reduction industry that uses it primarily for the omega-3 oil.
I just had to make a film about this little stinky, oily little fish nobody knows about, including me.
I've been on the bay all my life. I started out commercial crabbing, fishing. I've been living on the water and making a living off the water for my entire life.
Taking on water capsule, splashing all the chills.
I use menhaden for bait. We grind it up for chum, spoon it out into the water, and attract the fish in. It's sort of like using French fries for people. But as the fish see that and smell it, they come from far out. So then they'll come up and look for the bait. And when they get to that bait, we got them. Then it's dinner for us. Fish on, first fish on. It's a rockfish. Chum makes everybody look good. It's just amazing. Thanks to menhaden, even you can look good. It's a rockfish. Their favorite meal in the whole world is a menhaden. My favorite meal in the whole world is a rockfish, so we go together real well. It's funny how a stinky fish, like a menhaden, can make a fish like this taste so good by eating so many of them. Isn't that amazing?
People, they don't understand that menhaden are eaten by so many fish. It's like a main diet for trout, for drum, for rockfish, bluefish. So many fish feed on those that they don't realize that. What are you grinding up for chum? What's all this gooey stuff that you have here in this bucket? It's menhaden. It's just one of those fish that's out in the bay and everything feeds on it. And you know, that's why we use it for bait, because it works so well.
Menhaden is a small schooling fish. They spawn offshore and then they go into estuaries to feed and nurture. And the Chesapeake is the biggest estuary in this country and the biggest nursery for menhaden on this coast. Menhaden are fundamental to the Chesapeake ecosystem and really the ecosystem of the Atlantic coastal waters, in that they're the base of the food chain. They feed on plankton as filter feeders, and then they in turn are fed on by a wide range of other fish that are very important to us economically, but also to the food web itself.
For many people, menhaden are a valuable species. But to historian and author H. Bruce Franklin, menhaden are the most important fish in the sea.
Became clear to me based on personal experience, just one fishing trip to begin with, where I saw what the menhaden industry was doing to the environment. And by destroying menhaden, they were essentially pulling out the keystone from the whole arch of the marine ecology of the Atlantic coast. Menhaden are almost like a giant vacuum cleaner, sucking from the entire bay all kinds of excess phytoplankton. Each individual menhaden filters 4 gallons of water a minute. So menhaden play a huge role just by clarifying the water, allowing sunlight to penetrate down to the floor and stimulate vegetative growth that we absolutely need in the ecology. Without this, the food chain simply collapses.
What I really enjoyed working on this project was being able to use animations as part of the story rather than flash or icing on the cake afterwards. The animations really work to drive the story forward, and what I love about the fusion of animation and documentary filmmaking is that they kind of work really nicely to tell a story in a unique way.
Menhaden are certainly not being fished in a sustainable way in the Chesapeake Bay. That is a total ecological disaster. We are down, just in the past 10 years, we've lost between 80 and 90% of the population of menhaden.
The menhaden reduction fishery, where they reduce the fish, they process it into oil and meal, we call it the industrial fishery. That used to be found up and down the coast. 100 years ago, there were probably 50 plants operating to do that. But now it's all just one in Reedville, Virginia.
Located in Virginia's northern neck, Reedville is a small town on the Chesapeake Bay with a rich fishing heritage.
Menhaden put food on the table for my family, for my grandparents, my parents, and their family. When I was a youngster growing up around here, just about every family, every household had someone directly working for the menhaden fishery. It had a lot of impact here in the town of Reedville. When I was a pilot, I enjoyed it very much. It was very competitive, to the point where we had 2 major companies fishing in the bay. Each company had its fleet of boats, its own processing plants. It had a spotter pilot fleet for each company. Each day, you were competing against the other company to see how many fish you could catch. It was important at the end of the day that you took the tally to see who did the best. And if you had a good day, a better day than the other company, you felt pretty good. If they beat you, you had to do better the next day.
No, he's kind of giving us a little warning. I know what he's doing. No, you got to do what you got to do, but I'm loving it.
It was quite competitive, and we did a lot of things to get the best catch. We even went to scrambled radio so the competition couldn't hear your fish reports to your boats.
In 1997, the competition ended. 200 people lost their jobs when Reedville's industrial menhaden operations consolidated into just one company. Today, Omega Protein is the only reduction company still operating along the East Coast, and the small town of Reedville is the 2nd largest port in the country by tonnage. In 2010 alone, Reedville's catch weighed in at over 460 million pounds, almost all of it menhaden. But what does Omega do with all that menhaden?
Only one company knows the true promise this fish holds. We are Omega Protein, the world's largest producer of omega-3 rich fish oil. and North America's largest producer of protein-rich fish meal and fish solubles. We see the possibilities, and they're wide open.
You're not going to see a lot of retail products that are going to say omega protein, but virtually we're in farm-raised salmon, we're in a number of salad dressings. It's now used for human nutrition, for aquaculture uses, and swine and dairy uses. So you're not going to see omega protein on the shelf itself, but you're getting it every day in your basic grocery store.
What omega protein does is referred to as the reduction industry. It's reduction because they reduce the menhaden by boiling and grinding them and turning them into industrial commodities. I think the main thing to remember about these industrial products that come out of the menhaden after it's been reduced is that throughout the entire history of this industry, there has never been a product made from menhaden that we could only get from menhaden.
This is the saddest fact about Menhaden. They are at their lowest point on record, and that's an over 50-year-long record. They are down to less than 10% of what they once were. When you're talking about a species that's so important ecologically, to have their numbers decimated that much, it's a serious problem for Chesapeake Bay and for the coast.
While Omega Protein is the only reduction company left on the East Coast, there are still dozens of small-scale fishermen who catch menhaden and sell it as bait to anglers, commercial fishermen, and crabbers. Without a sustainable stock of menhaden, their livelihoods are on the line.
That's how we pay the bills, catching crabs, and we use menhaden as the bait that we bait the traps or pots with. Very important. We have to use the right bait to make a good catch. There's different guys involved in the process. Guys that catch it, guys that freeze it, sell it to the commercial guys, and then myself and others who actually buy the bait and use it in our crab pots. My father was a crabber, and my grandfather. We loved to work. We're also responsible watermen. We don't want to deplete the bay, of course, because having the resource in a healthy state is very important to me and my son and anybody else that's dependent on the bay.
In the course of the film, one of the turning points for me personally was Sarah and I were out driving, trying to actually meet up with a pound netter, and we couldn't meet up with him. And we were just driving down a road, and we saw this gentleman in this large field mending this enormous net. And so we got out of the car and went up to him and started talking to him. And it turns out he is the former captain of a Menhaden fishing boat. And by talking to Frederick Rogers, we learned so much about his own family heritage with the industry, the Menhaden industry. And in that moment, you just start connecting with different people, and it changes the way you're thinking about the issue. And so it's a really special aspect of this film and documentary filmmaking in general.
I was born in 1926. The first job I ever had was on a Menhaden boat. Most of the people really are involved in one way or the other in the Menhaden business. This is Frederick's net here, my son.
My name is Frederick Rogers III. I've commercial fisherman, have been owner and operator of this snapper rig for 22 years now. On a good week, the factory boats can catch the same amount of fish in 1 week that this boat, and we own another boat similar to this, can catch in a whole year. Fish we catch is really just a fraction of what those other guys can catch. Like I say, 95% of our fish go for bait. The factory boats catch 100% of their fish for reduction, and theirs is used in cosmetics and animal feed and omega-3 pills and different things like that.
My name is Walter Rogers. I'm a pound net fisherman. Pound netting is an older type of fishing. I mean, it's been around for hundreds of years. The Indians used it. Right now, there's a very few of us left. Pound net it's basically a series of poles or pilings that we put in the bay every year, probably 1,200 feet in length, and if it's almost a series of mazes where the fish come into a hedgerow or hedging that forces the fish to the deeper waters, and there we have a small maze set up where they forces them into a smaller pound. We set those nets out in the spring and we leave them in the same spot all year. And so hopefully we put them in the right spot and the fish come along. Personally, in what I do, Menhaden represent more than 50% of value of what I catch.
Altogether, bait fishermen like the Rogers family net only 20% of the total Menhaden catch coast-wide. The other 80% is harvested by omega protein.
With us being the only reduction fishery left on the East Coast, certainly left a pretty big target on omega protein's backs.
In November 2011, in a move to protect Menhaden from overfishing, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission voted to reduce the East Coast Menhaden catch by nearly 40%. A final decision still needs to be made on how to impose these limits on the reduction industry and bait fishermen.
I would like the viewers to connect with ecological issues in their own towns, because really this is not just the story simply about Menhaden, but it's also about the story of human relationships to the species in their area. This is about the town of Reedville and how they are managing an amazing resource that they've been blessed with in so many ways, and will they be able to manage this resource sustainably in such a way that their children and grandchildren and so forth will be able to reap the benefits that so many past generations have in this area. And we can find stories just like this all across the country, all across the world. And what we really need to do nowadays is try to find out how we can act within our own communities to help preserve the animals that we have these mutually beneficial relationships with, and make sure that we're not sacrificing them for dollars in the short term, but really allowing them to coexist with us.
Omega protein has convinced a lot of the bait fishery that they have to ally with omega, because omega has the muscle to really fight against any kind of regulation of catching menhaden at all.
We still don't know what the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries is going to do as far as the reduction, but any reduction of menhaden that I can catch is going to directly affect my profit. I think one guy had a sticker that said, save the menhaden, but I didn't see any of those people wearing save the waterman.
So they've gone after the reduction fleet. In the effort to get those guys out of business, a lot of people are going to suffer too. I sincerely don't think they really want to bother the mom and pop bait industry.
There's more here than just saving menhaden. I mean, it's a culture. Livelihood's been going on for generations in this area. I hate it when people come and pointing at me like I'm an extinct person. Oh, there's a pound netter. Oh, there's one over there. So it's, and that's what it's becoming. It's becoming more of a tourist attraction to see a pound netter than it is somebody out there working to make a living.
So as the editor on this film, the biggest challenge was balancing the story in the edit. So we had lots of different footage from very different groups and different perspectives on why menhaden was important, both ecologically and economically. The trick to editing is that you need to take all that information and make a story move from one point to the next. And so from beginning to end, the editor has to make sure that you're watching and that you're interested. And so that was certainly a challenge on this film, but I think we pulled it off, even though we had 6-7 different people that we were interviewing and filming.
All of us that rely on this for a living, these fish are here because they have bait fish to feed on. No food, no fish, no living.
We know that Menhaden have had crucial roles in the marine ecology. You cannot leave out a key part of a system and expect the system to work.
Menhaden fishing is pretty much all I've grown up with all my life. And if you've had that in your family, you hate to give it up. You hate to let it go.
If there were no more Menhaden in the bay, that would be devastating. I mean, that'd be horrible, because we wouldn't have the filter. If we didn't have those fish for that purpose only, the health of the bay would go down. It'd be tremendous. It'd be devastating to the economy. It really would. You have to have a balance. You have to have Menhaden. You have to have the whole ecosystem working together. You know, it's all got to work.
I think the story about Menhaden is really, it's this incredible story of potential. I know some people look at it and think, oh God, that's depressing, but in a way it's really exciting, because if we brought back the sustainability level of this fish, or we increased it beyond maybe what we've been used to for the last 100 years, but if we look back in time to what the Chesapeake Bay could be like, it was just one of the largest fisheries in the world, and it's at a time where we're importing over 80% of the fish in the US, the possibilities of bringing the bay back to life are just incredible. And when you realize that as complex as this issue is, it's still simple in relation to a lot of global issues going on, and here's something that we really can bring this fish back, and I think it would just have a huge impact on the bay, and to me that's exciting. I see it as this big story of opportunity.
Reedville truly is mired in a struggle, an economic and political brawl, with the health of the bay and the survival of businesses on the line. But it's also in a struggle for its culture to survive, a history, a way of life. Even though the industry has modernized, a small group of men are dedicated to keeping the old Menhaden fishing traditions alive.
All right, fellas, you ready to raise them? We ready to raise them? Let's go get them, boys. Let's go get them. Bring them up. Come on, boys.
Yeah.
Help me.
We'll call the Northern Neck Shanty Singers.
Fishing industry plays a big part in our lives because a lot of our men are occupied by fishing.
Let's go get them. When young men came out of school or quit school, whatever, they either went fishing or went into the military. Those were the opportunities that we had. The song that we're performing help us to raise them. It is our theme song. And it is that song that we use to coordinate the pulling of the net.
Oh, my Lord. Had so many in the net, almost make you cry sometimes. But once you got singing the shanty, that put everybody in coordination for pulling. Then you know you was making some money. Catch no fish, you didn't get no money. So we always wanted them to see them fish in that net. You see them come around in the net or make the water real rough in the net, and you can see them go by. Then it's thick as hound dog back. Everybody be screaming and a howling.
Oh, the weight's on the donkey, man. Hey, hey, honey.
Shanty singers, pound netters, crabbers, anglers. If we keep taking Menhaden out of the bay in such large numbers, we also stand to lose the unique culture that has developed here. The future sustainability of Menhaden in the Chesapeake Bay depends on the actions of a multitude of interests: commercial, regulatory, environmental, and recreational. What's at stake is not just Menhaden, but the future of all the other fish, wildlife, and people who rely on this stinky, oily little fish that could very well be the most important fish in the sea.
If we seriously protect Menhaden and go beyond just the status quo, but actually try to restore the Menhaden to anything approaching the historical population, then we're talking about this entire coast having a boom in many different ways.
I hope that viewers of Menhaden, the most important fish in the bay, take away the fact that Menhaden matter. You walk along a sidewalk every day and you crush an ant. You don't give much thought to it. And Menhaden are kind of like ants. Every little tiny thing has a role. And in the Chesapeake Bay and on the Atlantic seaboard, Menhaden have a really important role. So viewers really should take note of those things we kind of overlook every day or we don't know much about. Menhaden's a perfect example of that. So look around and you'll discover the things that really matter, and sometimes they're really, really small.
The dream is for the Menhaden to be so thick in this bay one day again, like John Smith when he came back up here to do all the surveys of the bay, when he mapped the bay and explored up here, he had in his memos that the Menhaden were so thick they looked like a white froth in the water. The water was boiling, all from every angle that he went to. Every place he went to, it was frothing. Awesome. Can you imagine how many fish we'd have in the bay then? If we had all that bait and how clean the waters would be? That was the ultimate. We can't get back to that point, but we can get closer. We can just start correcting things slowly and make things come back a little bit better.
Airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories. World news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.